What are your thoughts on the Slim Fatty? Is it worth signing to a small record label? I always struggle with starting new tracks. How do you usually start a new track? I'll sign tracks for free, but it has to be on your label. Hey guys, welcome to the Kane audio vlog. It's Friday, it's time for another Ask Me Anything. Usual rules apply. Comment anything you want below this video and I'll get back to you in next week's video. Before I look at last week's video, is there any house admin? What have I been doing this week? I couldn't even tell you. I've made some small progress on my album. I've been looking a bit more realistically into setting up a record label. I've had a couple of distribution offers. I'm being fussy for a reason, so that's ongoing. But I'm seeing what's out there, and it's looking good, I would say. What else? I've updated the tonal display playlist, so check that out on Spotify. I'll put a link below this video. I have also looked at, when this video goes out it won't be live, but I've been looking at giving a bit of a shuffle to some of the Kane Audio merch. So if you were or are interested in any Kane Audio merch, then be quick for the old stuff. So it'll be shop.kaneaudio.com. Otherwise, at some point in the next week there should be a refresh. I think that's it for updates. That's all I can think of. I've not written anything down this week, so let's just run with that. Let's have a look at last week's video. Starting at the top, there's only a few comments this week, so shouldn't be too long. Sunset 86, slow, high five. Happy New Year and new decade, Dom. So technically it's not a new decade, is it? Decade starts in 2021 because it's 2021 to 2030-ish. So, but okay. But yeah, I get what you're saying. It is a new decade, really, but mathematically it's not, because we started on year 1 and not year 0. I'm just being facetious. All the talk about Moog in the last video was funny, as I've just purchased a Moog Slim Fatty. Well, high five for that. I then noticed that behind you is what appears to be a Slim Fatty White edition. It is. I haven't tried it yet, but what are your thoughts on the Slim Fatty? So yeah, right there is the Slim Fatty White. I was honoured to be a part of the preset design exclusively for the limited edition white Slim Fatties. It was myself, Chad Jackson and Orbital. So yeah, I was hugely honoured to be amongst those two names putting together the presets. So I think I'm probably going to be very biased when I say it's an amazing bit of kit, but I actually genuinely think that the Slim Fatty, the fact that you can chain a few of them up and go poly, which I have done with my Sub and Little Fatty, which is still boxed up, you know, so you can go poly with them. It would be quite nice to have a rack of Slim Fatties, really, for that reason. But yeah, no, they're great synths. I mean, as far as a truly analog sound and an approachable user interface, I honestly think for the money you just cannot go wrong with a Slim Fatty, for that beautiful clean bass. Yeah, what a synth. Obviously it's a Moog, so as I often hear people say, like Moog is the Armani of synth brands. I'll take your word for that. I don't really, I've never seen anything Armani in my life. I'm not into clothes, but I'll take your word for it. I was thinking of also getting a Mother 32 at some point, although Behringer seems to be releasing analog clones at the rate of one a month. They do. In fact, a mate of mine came up to me last month, Ant, big shout out to Ant, and he said, if I had X amount of money, what would you suggest? And I said, you know what, for that amount of money, it was mid to low budget for synths. I said, do you know what, I'd probably just buy a bunch of the Behringer synths. I'm saying Behringer, don't know what it is. And I said I'd probably get a bunch of those and have a bit of change left over at the end. He did exactly that, and as far as I can see, there are no regrets. Yeah, they look like they're great bits of kit. I might speak to Behringer about that and see what we can do. See if we can get some here to review or demo for this YouTube channel or something. Would be quite nice. Yeah, so they do seem to be releasing clones at pretty much one a month at the minute, and good for them. They're doing a good job, and I feel like it's been a long time coming where a synth company made budget synths that sound and look and feel good, and that's quite a rare thing. In my time, in fact, I've even talked about some on this channel that I won't name for client privilege reasons, but I have used some synths that are very expensive and they feel like cheap plastic crap. So it's good that someone like Behringer is making a budget synth that actually feels better than a lot of expensive synths. As for the Mother 32, I would say definitely go for it if you've got the Slim Fatty as well, because you've got the CV ins and outs and you can play around and expand there. Mother 32 is only going to add to that. And if you like the Slim Fatty, that is, then you're going to love the Mother 32 to add on. So I would say definitely go for it. Hope you have a good weekend, Dom. You too, Sunset 86. Nathan Saskarinskis, slow, high five. Hope you had a good Christmas and New Year. I've got two things for you, Dom. Firstly, I purchased the Behringer, here we go, K2, replica of the MS-20. Surprisingly good quality, etc., considering it's Behringer, but there is one problem. It doesn't receive MIDI CC. Okay. Does it receive MIDI notes? I wonder. Tell me if it receives MIDI notes. Is there any way to overcome this? Not that I'm aware of, because if the parameters... So CC are command control, so that would be for parameters like filter cutoff or decay times, whatever, ADSR. So if they're not assigned to a MIDI controller, then they wouldn't be CC assignable in any state, which is kind of a shame. But I guess, again, when you're talking about budget synths, now you mention it, I suppose it's to be expected. But yeah, that's the kind of thing people should be made aware of before they buy it, because I think for some people that's probably a deal breaker. My current solution is to use CV to control the parameters, but it's not exactly what I want for this project. Yeah, if you're using CV to control parameters, then I'd be surprised if Behringer didn't have CC set up for it. But maybe there's a reason, I don't know. I know that there was, when it comes to MIDI over USB, I don't know if it's still an issue, but there was definitely a cost issue in manufacture to get MIDI over USB. You could have USB to do certain functions, but then to have it running MIDI, I think it was like you needed a different kind of USB or a next generation chipset, so it got considerably more expensive in the manufacturing point, I think. I know there used to be an issue going back a few years, but that used to be an issue. I don't know if it is now, but that certainly was one of the things. That's one of the reasons that we never had good budget synths years ago, but that seems to be changing, so I don't know. As long as as I want a really long filter sweep on it and can't quite get it to sound right for the project, and MIDI CC would have made life easier. Yes, I agree. It would make life a lot easier. I think that's definitely something worth looking into, though. Secondly, another YouTuber I watched suggested using a service called DistroKid. It's a yearly subscription which allows you to release music onto all major platforms, so I could release as much music as I want on Spotify/iTunes, etc. I'm contemplating trying it, but was wondering what your thoughts on it are. It would mean I could release music as I please rather than looking for a label to do it for me. So it gives me more freedom and may be able to grow my listening base quicker. But on the other hand, all releases would be unsigned, but I don't think that is really an issue, especially since some labels seem more interested in followers, listeners you've already cultivated. So this is the big debate of 2020 really is it worth signing to a small record label? So starting at the start, so let's start with the DistroKid thing. That's one of the companies I've looked into with distribution. My issue is that I would like to get to a point, I want the label to have future options which include direct access and human access to certain outlets. So by that I mean, what I would like is, once the label has a proven track record and a decent history and whatever, I would like to at some stage be able to speak to people at, whether it be Apple Music, iTunes, Spotify, whatever, and actually discuss certain strategies. If you're going through someone like DistroKid, I think pretty much all of that just goes out the window. You can't. It's not an option. However, they're not taking a cut of your royalty, so it's not in their interest to do that anyway. So that's not a bad thing about them. It's just a reason that I think I would go with a proper distributor rather than an aggregate like DistroKid. If you're just wanting to put your own stuff out, then that's fine. But that brings us on to the debate of should you sign to a record label as an independent artist? And there's a lot of reasons. There's a lot of pros and cons on both sides. For me personally, I've always talked about the bigger labels that I sign with, whether it be Universal or Mousetrap or whatever, and clearly they have a following that helps me to a certain extent, and hopefully I bring some followers to them as well. So it's kind of a mutual thing, so it works. With a smaller label, and I have said this before, why would I sign a track of mine to a small label that nobody's heard of? When I could, for example, sign up with DistroKid and just release it myself. And I think that's a perfectly valid question, and it's one that you need to think about. So there are issues with that. So obviously, if I signed it myself and put it out through DistroKid or whatever, then I own the royalties. And if at a later date I wanted to sign it to a big label, then because I own everything, I can I can take it down from the online stores and sign it off to wherever I want. So I'm still in control of it, I guess, is the big pro. But the big con is, if I don't already have a big following, who's going to hear about it, and how am I going to promote it? How am I going to market that? Who's going to help me market that? Is anyone going to help me market that? Or am I going to have to pay a team to do it? And in which case, if I'm paying a team to market my release, what are my expected returns from that? Am I just throwing money down the drain, or am I going to make some of it back? And there's a lot of questions you've got to ask yourself there. So I think, so a lot of these questions have come up as to why I'm thinking of setting up a record label myself right now. One of the reasons is I want it to be a small roster of regularly releasing artists that are all somewhat similar in style, but certainly similar in attitude, because you each tap into each other's fan base and have access to that support, and I think that's important. So it's more of a collective than just a record label. We're also looking at having a team of dedicated people that run on dedicated tasks. So, for example, I have always said I'm no good at visual arts. I like what I like and I dislike what I dislike, but I'm not in any way, shape, or form an artist. I'm not very good at visually conceiving something in my head. It just doesn't work. I am through and through. My ears are my best feature, not my eyes. So it would be, it would be silly of me to set up a record label on my own and not have somebody take care of the art, for example. Equally, I'm not, as any long-time follower of this channel will know, I'm terrible at plugging my own stuff. So doing stuff like digital marketing, I'm okay at developing strategies and stuff. Seeing it through on my own work, I'm not the best, so I kind of need someone with me on that. Which is why this label I'm potentially setting up, I've already spoken to 3 or 4 other people, and I'm in continuous talks with them about different job roles and strategies and stuff like that. So having a proper record label, or signing to a proper record label that has a team of people with independent job roles, can be a much more effective way of doing it. So I think, you've got to kind of distinguish, there's maybe not much point in you signing your tracks over to a one-man band record label that's just operated from someone's bedroom and, it's just one person, because, what's in it for them to promote you? Not much, really, because the music sales side of stuff these days doesn't make a huge amount. So again, this is something I've had to ask myself is, well, what's this record label going to do that's different? And there are a few things that I'm not going to mention right now that we're going to be doing that will be radically different to, well, pretty much any other record label that I know of. So it's about being forward thinking, and it's about having opportunities in the future. There is a distributor that I'm in talks with at the minute who have teams of people on standby, and once they see that you're doing a certain type of work, they will help with strategies and stuff like that. So there's a whole host of reasons to sign things to a label. I feel like the last decade, everybody's been banging on about how record labels are pointless and dead and whatever. And I've kind of agreed with most of it, apart from the big labels. But I feel like 2020 is the year that these things change. And I think to start a record label now, you have to be somewhat forward thinking, and you need to be able to do things slightly differently. The playing field has changed. We're not, it used to be about releasing club bangers, and it used to be about getting Beatport top 40s or whatever. For me personally, all of that's pretty much irrelevant now. It's a whole different kind of market, and I guess it's a case of understanding that. So hopefully that kind of helps, I guess. I seem to have just gone off on a tangent and probably not said very much actual useful information there, I feel like, but hopefully there's something in there. So what else have you said? You said rather than looking for a label to do it for me, so it gives more freedom. You're right about the freedom. So able to grow my listening base quicker. Now that's a really interesting point, I think, because how does releasing music grow your listener base? In my view, it kind of does, but not very much. So, and the reason I say that is because I could put up samples of my tracks on SoundCloud, my own website, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. I could put clips of my music or entire tracks, whatever, just stick it out everywhere like that on social media. And I think that would grow my fan base quicker than releasing it through DistroKid and chucking it out on Spotify and Beatport and whatever else. I think people are more likely to hear my music on social media than they are to buy the MP3 or whatever. Certainly when it comes to following me or growing a listener base or something, I feel like social media is where the growth happens. So do you even need to release music to have that growth? Probably not, because you kind of do that for free through social media anyway, I think. I mean, I'm sort of trying to be a bit vague there, because that's not 100% true for everyone and everything, but that's kind of how I see it. So actually, by releasing your music, I guess that's the question I have to ask you, is if you're going to release your music, you're self-releasing through DistroKid, for example, how is that going to grow your listeners? Okay, it comes out on Spotify, you jump on social media and you tell people it's on Spotify, and that's fine, but had it not come out on Spotify and you just put it on social media in the first place, you're still accessing the same people. And I think that's what I'm trying to say, is by releasing music on Beatport without a marketing strategy and plan put into place and a big campaign, are you really being discovered by people that wouldn't have already found your music? Probably not. I don't think Beatport, in fact Beatport in particular, is probably a good example of where discovery of new artists is kind of monopolised by the chart. How do you find new artists on Beatport? I hear them in the top 100, which means they're already somewhat popular. So am I really discovering unfound talent? No, not really. I'm just late to the party. So to get discovered on Beatport, you already need to have a big following, and you already need to be climbing the charts to get that discovery, and it's about that snowballing effect. So self-releasing kind of doesn't work there. That's the way I see it. I could be totally wrong. Or you could have, hey, I don't know, you could be a millionaire and you could be willing to just throw money at big marketing campaigns. And if that's the case, great, do that. But I would say, and this is something I've said before, working with record labels, I feel like it should be a collaborative effort. Don't ever look at signing a track to a label where you just sign your track to the label and then that's it, you forget about it, that's job done, move on, different label now. You want to form a relationship with that label, where, sign with a label where you love all their other releases that aren't yours, and where they love all your releases as well, and there's a partnership of support. I feel like that's a much better way of looking at record labels these days. Certainly a good record label. Anyway, moving on. Gold Toast. Hi, Dom. Hope you haven't had a slow week. High five. I always struggle with starting new tracks. How do you usually start a new track? And do you have any tips on how to come up with new and interesting ideas for a new track? I struggle as well. I think everyone struggles. If I'm totally honest, I definitely struggle. Sometimes I probably struggle more than others in starting a new track. So it's not an easy task, especially so using my album that I'm working on at the minute. So I had about 40 tracks. I whittled it down to about 20 tracks. Of those 20 tracks, I whittled it down to about 12 tracks, and I then made it about 10 tracks, and then made 2 more, and then it went like that, and I got it nailed to about 12 tracks, and I felt like, this is it, this is my album, I'm happy with this whole body of work. And then something happened and I decided, no, this is wrong, I'm coming at this album from the whole wrong angle, I need to review it. So I pulled out 6 tracks and went down to 6, and then I added or wrote 2 more, making it 8, and I'm now looking at it going, I need 4 more tracks, and I'm kind of stuck, if I'm totally honest. So I am at that point where I'm kind of stuck with, where do I start? So I think it's a very real question, but it's one that maybe I'm not the best at answering. First of all, my recommendation is always do something different. Listen to some music that you don't write. If you write house music, listen to some drum and bass. If you make drum and bass, listen to some punk. Listen to some ambient electronica or something. Just something that is outside of your realm. Because I always find that listening to other people's genres, for me, listening to some reggae does it for me, or some ska, where I might just hear a hi-hat shuffle, or a bass line of some sort, or listening to some reggae, I'll hear some delay or some echo or something like that, and it just inspires me to go, do you know what? Oh, I'm going to try that in a house track or whatever. And that's kind of where I get my inspiration. For me, I've said before as well, my biggest inspiration has always come from things like sci-fi films. Watching a sci-fi film and just getting out of the studio and sticking on a sci-fi film, and listening to the film score. Because a film score for a sci-fi film is generally really emotive. It's very progressive. And so as a progressive house producer, you can take those chord progressions and the ideas of how they progress, and how a film score will introduce new sounds or new melodies or new ideas into the piece of music, applies to progressive house perfectly for me, or ambient electronica, or that kind of deeper techno. So that kind of works for me. I tend to get my inspiration from outside of whatever I'm working on. As for how do I start a track, for me, I think most people probably know this by now, it's usually about the chord progression. So I quite like to sit there with a nice grand piano sound, or an acoustic piano of some sort, and just play some chords. Just pick a scale and play some chords inside the scale. And just start with that, basically. Just start with those chords, and at some point something will usually click into place. But I kind of do it with a view to, I don't think about what the track's going to sound like. I don't think about what the drums are going to sound like. I have no clue. So, if you look at, for example, Stoic, my latest EP on Mousetrap, available in all good online stores. If you look at the chord progression of Stoic, I purposefully slip outside the scale, and that was really me experimenting. I've explained in one of my tutorial videos for Sonic Academy, actually, how my previous EP, I felt like I wanted to play a note that wasn't in the scale, and I was kind of pushing my music theory boundaries at the time, and I didn't feel comfortable enough to play a note outside of the scale. So then in my next EP, I thought, no, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it this time. And I played that note outside the scale, and it just kind of worked. And I had no clue how the instruments were going to sound. I had no clue. If you listen to Stoic now, you wouldn't have guessed I wrote that on an acoustic piano, because it's not an acoustic piano type track. But I wrote those chords on an acoustic piano because it's just such a neutral sound, and I like the sound of a piano, and it just feels like I'm just solely focusing on the chords then, instead of the sound design or the drop, or I'm not picturing in my head how those drums are going to sound. So it's kind of like tricking yourself into pretending you're not actually producing a track, and it takes the pressure off, I guess, because otherwise if you sit there with an empty Ableton or Bitwig or whatever, and you're going, right, I have to make a big track, it's going to be a huge hit, you're just putting so much pressure on yourself, you're not going to get it written. It's just not going to happen. So I find, by psychologically tricking myself into thinking I'm not writing a track, I'm just playing piano, then I'm able to develop some chords where I go, oh, that's nice, and then I'll use those chords and convert them into I'll record them or type them out or whatever into piano roll, and then all of a sudden I've got a track, and then I go, ooh, stick a big kick drum on this, and then the track starts developing. Hopefully that helps. I can see my camera's coming up to 30 minutes, so I'm just going to hit reset. And I'm back. I really should be getting a camera that doesn't stop every 30 minutes, but I'll have a budget for it one day. Zombo, love your videos, Dom. You end up talking about making a label. Please do it. I'll sign tracks for free, but I has to be on your label. Happy New Year. Thank you very much. Nobody is going to be on the label for free. Again, talking about forward thinking, I would be heavily swinging percentages in the artist's favour. Again, because as a label, and again, it's not 100% confirmed yet, but in my view, to set up a label in this day and age, you have to be somewhat forward thinking and doing something slightly different, which I have ideas for. And if those ideas pan out, then it would put the label in a good position to be able to offer a much bigger percentage to the artist than to the label. So yeah, that's how I view it in this digital age. So there we go. Not that that means a great deal in this day and age either, because let's be honest, you know, music sales don't exactly make people a millionaire overnight. Fanfan87, salut Dom, slow, BMW, high five, high five. Happy New Year for all your family and friends, and 2020 bless your next EPs and your album. Where's the pre-order link, lol? Yeah, so as I just explained, actually, I'm now down to 8 tracks, and I'm hoping to get the rest done in the next few months. I'm already in talks with some labels, and again, it's kind of a slow process, but I'm really hoping to get everything completely finished and signed by the summer, hopefully. So I would imagine it would be like an autumn release, I guess. Yeah, probably something like that. Months ago, vlog 102, I asked you about starting a radio show. So I started this year. I do it monthly on SoundCloud just to test it. Probably following your advice to speed it up from monthly to every 2 weeks to build the attendance. So you did speed it up to every 2 weeks, or I think, no, probably will. Okay. My question is this week about it. If you had one, would you play tracks if you had a radio show, would you play tracks you are making at the moment, like Prids, Christoph or Olander, do as example, or would you play exclusively tracks you're almost sure they are 98% finished, like Deadmau5, Sebastian Lerger, or even big main stage names like Getter, Garrix and stuff do? Is it seemed as honesty to proof test all your audible work, or is it too risky? I mean, if this was your case, if you had a radio show. I mean, I think it's okay to play unfinished stuff. If it works, it works. If it fits, it fits. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I think a lot of it comes down to popularity of the radio show. And I think also a lot of it comes down to how your radio show is focused. So, for example, if it was a 1 hour show and I'm playing 3, 4, 5 of my own tracks, is that really a radio show, or is that just a promotional tool of your own music? I think it's just a promo tool then. It's not really a radio show. So in reality, and again, it depends on how frequent the shows are as well, so it's hard to judge. But I would say there shouldn't be a problem with playing your own stuff, even if it's not finished. The only thing to be careful of is some record labels don't like to be signing stuff that isn't that's already been heard by the public. I guess that's something to be careful of. You'd be surprised, a lot of people that play things that are unfinished, they usually, quite often, there is a finished version already and it has already been signed and there is already a release date scheduled in, and it's only going to come out in about 3 weeks time. So that lead up is actually more of like, it's not a trick, it's not a scam or anything, but there's usually a bit more behind the scenes where, and I'm not saying these particular artists do that because I don't know, but I have heard of a few DJs who will play a unfinished track on the radio and then the finished version comes out 3-4 weeks later, and that's all part of the promo because people feel that they've heard it develop then, which is good, you know. And I guess as the way Deadmau5 used to constantly upload demos and bits and just rough drafts and whatever to SoundCloud, acted as a great promotional tool because it kept us all interested. I'm guessing he doesn't do that now. I don't follow him on SoundCloud or anything, but I'm guessing he doesn't do that anymore. But I think that was a great promotional tool. So there's definitely nothing wrong with doing that. But you've got to ask yourself, does it really fit in the radio show? You know, obviously if you you can't just play a 5-minute kick drum bass line combo and then expect people to love it. So it kind of needs to keep your listeners happy, I suppose. And if they're happy, then everyone else should be happy. So that's my view on that. And I think, that is it for this week. It's been about 40 minutes, not too bad. We have internet problems in this house today because I'm changing a contract over, so apologies if this goes up late. I don't think it will be late, to be honest. It should be all right. But to prove you have made it this far into the video, comment the word essential. Because I can see here, Essential Mix from 2004, Sasha and Digweed. Oh, I might listen to that. Have a good weekend, guys, and I will see you next week. Cheers.